Okay, so that was all of the various reports that exist within the system. So what I want to look at now is a bunch of recommended reports. And I've broken this down into different categories. So the first one is kind of like the daily stuff, the things you should look at on a pretty regular basis. The first of which is the dashboard. Now, what I have here next to it is, this is the category which you'll find that report. So it's a utilization report. Okay. So I want to look at the dashboard. I either can do this manually or I can schedule them so that they are sent to me on a daily basis. I just want to point out that when you do scheduling, you have the ability to schedule at multiple levels. So I could say, take the report manager dashboard, for example, and send that to myself on a daily basis, but actually filter it so that it does it on a weekly basis, and I can send it to somebody else. Certain reports can go here and there to anyone you like. It really becomes an incredibly flexible tool in determining who's going to see what information, basically. The event details is an audit report, and I talked about that a little bit earlier. It's going to give me a list of all of the events that have taken place within the system. Next on my list is the daily protection status. Again, I mentioned that one as well. Great report. I really like that one. The failed jobs report comes next. Again, it's an excellent report, but again, I will mention the same thing I said earlier, and that's, I don't actually look at the failed job reports, because the very next one, the Sla Violations Summary, will include all failed jobs. It becomes a matter of who you're going to distribute the information to. Okay, so a job that has failed means we have violated our SLA. We said we were going to protect something and we were unable to do it. So you might only send that failed jobs to somebody, but send the SLA violation report to someone else. With the SLA violation, what I'm concerned about is obviously anything that stops me from meeting my SLA. But sometimes we get violation messages that are not an error or a problem that needs to be resolved. The best example I can give is if you have multiple policies that take place on a particular day. And in the class, we use an example of doing a dedupe on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. The daily runs every day. The weekly only runs on Thursdays, and the monthly only runs on the 5th day of the month. So we have some potential conflicts there. And that is, on Thursday, the weekly policy should take effect, but we have a daily policy that says run every day. And what our system does is, whenever we have multiple policies, we use the one with the longest retention period. So typically that would be set so that the weekly one has a longer period. So what's going to happen is the system is going to say, okay, I have a daily and a weekly schedule to run, but I'm only going to run the weekly one today. That means the daily did not happen. Well, it didn't have to happen because the weekly did. We did dedupe the information. The problem is it does trigger an SLA violation because the daily was scheduled and it didn't run. Okay, so that's an example of a violation that actually is not the result of an error or anything. It's just telling us that something was scheduled and we did not perform it. And of course, the 5th day of the month, we're going to run the monthly, but have a problem because the daily should run again as well. So we'll trigger a violation of the daily on that day as well. Now, think about it. What happens if the 5th falls on a Thursday? Now we have the daily, the weekly, and the monthly that all could run and can't. So we can only run one of them. We'll run the monthly, and we'll trigger 2 SLA violations. By the way, in the SLA webinar and in our e-learning module on the Actifio Now portal, you'll see that it mentions the fact that there's ways around that, and I can create an exception that says run daily except on Thursdays, except on the 5th day of the month, and then I won't have that kind of problem. So SLA Violation Summary covers a lot more things. It's the report that I choose to use. Bandwidth utilization, I mentioned, great for network admins. Send it off to that person, on a regular basis. And recovery point by application. So we're going to take a look at each of these reports kind of briefly, but just to cover some of the key things about some of those reports. So I already mentioned the report manager. Again, the key thing about this report is that these are widgets, and I can click on them, and that will take me to specific reports. So if I want to look at the details of these backup jobs, I can click on that widget and it will take me there.
Thank you for joining us for another YouTube Tech Tip video. If you like the content you're seeing on this channel, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you will be alerted to any future content.